Welcome to the RavenFist Studio podcast. Today on the RavenFist Studio podcast, we're going to be discussing the history of the cheat code. Who do I have with me today?
Stacy.
Matt.
Okay, very dramatic Matt today. All right.
Dramatic pause there, buddy.
Yeah, this is already going well.
That might have to be a thing.
Okay, you know what? If you feel the need to be extra dramatic today to talk about the history of the cheat code, that's fine. So cheat codes, where do we want to start with this? That's a big topic.
That is a big topic. When I think of cheat codes, it like many things, it just like brings you back to your childhood, because there's a point in my gaming life when I was, too young to really understand the value of playing a game just, for what it was meant to be, that like I'd get a new game or I'd rent a game, and then after I finished, reading the instruction book, which some people may not even know what that is, but the first thing I would do is I'd get on my computer and I would look up all the cheat codes that I could find, and I would print them out, and I would like circle the ones I wanted to use, and it was awesome, it was exciting. And before I even played one level of the game, that was what I did, is I cheated the whole thing. God mode, infinite ammo, just everything you can think of, and I was like, this is awesome, I love this game. And there were probably so many games that I played, quote unquote, never experiencing the game for what it really should have been.
So I'm curious why, because I actually did something very similar when I was a kid, but I'm curious why you felt the need to do that. Can you put any logic behind that for us?
I don't know. I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about was, and you still do this as an adult, but especially when you're a kid, it's like your imagination kind of takes over. You know what I mean? Like, you're playing a game, and yeah, the game has its own story and events and things that are happening, but you kind of get lost in your own mind as far as, or at least I would, so you had this like, almost like a sense of power. And so then you could kind of make up your own story and what was going on, and there were no limitations. Yeah. And so, and I know that was one thing I always really enjoyed, was just that sense of just complete power and control, and you could just go through and wipe the whole thing out without ever having to think about it. It was just fun at the time. Maybe kind of like the way you could watch a movie 3 times, 4 times in a row, and you loved it. Whereas an adult, you're like, no, I'm good. Just one for now, maybe later.
Well, I remember doing that. Like I said, I did that very similar thing when I was a kid, except when I was a kid, we didn't have the internet. I was scouring through issues of Nintendo Power, looking.
You just aged yourself.
Yeah,
wow.
Totally. That's fine. People know I'm the old curmudgeon of this group. But so I would get every issue of Nintendo Power would have this classified corner or something. I don't remember exactly what it was called, and our listeners are going to dig me for that because I should remember what that was. But they would have a section where they would publish cheat codes, and I would get a new issue of Nintendo Power in the mail, and I would crack open to that section, and if there was anything that was like infinite health, infinite life, invincibility, anything like that, that would be the next game I would rent. Because I was like, okay, I know I can beat that game now that I've got this cheat code. And I remember as a kid being like obsessed with like the number of Nintendo games I had finished. There was like this chart on my wall. It was like, scratch off another one. Yeah, I beat it.
And did you count it even when you cheated? Like,
absolutely.
That was a legit finish?
That was a legit finish. Mm-hmm. Whatever I had to do to get to the end of that game was totally fine. Stacy, what's your experience with cheat codes?
I think my experience differs a little bit. I tried it on a couple of games, and I had to really think back. I think it was maybe Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and then probably Metroid. And honestly, after doing that, I kind of felt like it cheapened the experience for me, and I felt like a kid that had maybe peeked at all his Christmas presents, and then, there was no surprise there. Not that I ever did that, guys, but...
You shouldn't either.
In my case, I did go back and was able to actually beat the game, and I just felt like it was a much better experience doing that. And but as you guys know, I'm the crazy guy that'll get into a game and grind out hours after hours for, trying to get that perfect weapon or, that next level. So
Destiny.
Yeah, Destiny. But, so I feel like my experience was a little different on it. I think it's a cool idea, and I never really knew about the development aspect of it, and that's how it came about, and that's really cool. But I'm not a fan, because I think and maybe I'm connecting dots that don't connect, but I think that the cheat code kind of ended up getting us to a pay to win, or we're at the point now where on modern titles you have people that are actually paying for people to get on their accounts and go get them a particular weapon or a particular level, and just not a fan of cheating.
So that's an interesting idea that you're positing here, which is the idea of a cheat code in an old game that would give you some kind of boost that turned into pay to win, that turned into loot boxes, that turned into DLC components, all the things that we deal with games now. And that's an interesting idea. I don't know that you can directly draw a line between the two, but I think the idea of pay to win, the idea of spending a couple of bucks to get some currency so that you can buy that extra gun, I think that idea very much has its root in the cheat code and that kind of thing. So you kind of touched on a lot of things there that I think we should discuss. And the first thing I want to ask is this idea about, are cheat codes valid? They're called cheat codes, but is it really cheating? And I'll tell you a story of a friend of mine I had when I was a kid, because at the time it just totally floored me. But his mother would not let him use the warp pipes in Super Mario Brothers because that was quote unquote cheating.
And I don't agree with that, because I think that's a mechanic in the game, and I think that's giving you a choice to go through there or not. And a cheat code, I don't necessarily feel like maybe cheat code is the appropriate name for it, but I do feel in my personal experience that so much of like the pay to win stuff, why are you paying to get to the top tier? Because to me, part of the enjoyment is getting there and the accomplishment of going, hey, that was tough, but I did it.
Go ahead, sorry.
And situations like a pay to win, if it's a competitive situation and you're paying to win, yeah, it's cheating. It's an unfair advantage. Because not everybody's willing to or able to go in and, I bought this $60 or $80 title. Now I need to spend $100 to level up and get all these different things so I can be competitive. Not a fan.
Matt, you were going to say
something? No, I think you hit on it there. When cheating or cheat codes, and it could be so many different things now. They wrap up that kind of stuff in, like you said, DLC and even difficulty modes and different modes in the game or options that you tick or whatever. So it might not even be a code that you enter, but just something that you choose, or maybe you unlock it when you finish the game, whatever. If it's involving other people, I think that's when it becomes a problem. So yeah, if you're competing, that should just not exist. That should not be a possibility unless it's like a group of people that all agree that we're gonna finagle the game a little bit and have some fun. Mm-hmm. But when it involves other people, you might mess up somebody's game. You might mess up their fun, their experience, because maybe they don't want to do that. They want to do it the quote unquote right way.
So I think we need to make a distinction because there is, like, the idea of the cheat code that we're talking about. Like, an example would be the Konami Code from the 8-bit NES, right? So up, down, left, right, BA start. In Contra, it gives you 30 lives. In Gradius, it gives you 30 lives. In other games, it does other things. Like, that is a cheat code, mm-hmm. right? But Contra is, at best, a 2-player game, and that code's going to help both of you out. It's not online. You're not dealing with other people. And so then what you guys are kind of talking about with online gaming, I think that's what ruined the cheat code. You know, because once you do start doing online and competitive gaming, that kind of stuff, then, you know, the justification for having that there completely goes out the window. And so you look at the history of video games, and once games started to go online, once there started to be that competitive edge to it, cheat codes basically disappeared. You know, so I don't think there's any question that in that kind of context, absolutely it's cheating, and absolutely it shouldn't be done. Because what replaced the cheat codes in that context are like aimbots and that kind of thing, you know, which is legitimately cheating. I mean, that is trying to better your ability artificially in order to win against other people. And that's not what we're talking about. That's not fun. I mean, that's ruining the game for somebody else. But I kind of want to take it back to a little bit of history, to something that Stacy had said earlier, which was that it came from development. And the idea that cheat codes were development tools at the earliest onset. And so people who were making video games needed to test video games, but we're talking like original arcade, we're talking Atari 2600. The point of those games were to be as difficult as possible to make the most money. So you had testers who needed to test level 4 or level 5 and couldn't get to level 4 or level 5 in their own games. So they would put in cheat codes, and that's how they would advance to different levels, and that's how they would be able to do their testing. And it kind of just developed from there. So like then that information would leak out, people would find it word of mouth, and then suddenly it's like, hey, if you push these buttons at this game at this time, it's going to do something really cool.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. And so, like, I'm curious, Stacy, you mentioned a lot about how you really didn't like it. You thought it took the game away. You know, have you played Contra with 3 lives versus playing Contra with 30 lives?
Oh, it's a nightmare. That's a exceptionally tough game. But, you know, I probably... You know, I guess my view might be different than a lot of people. I enjoy the struggle. I mean, I played one game, for example, Dark Souls. Dark Souls 3. I die all the time. I play it for about 30 minutes, and then I, you know, am on the verge of rage quit and getting a serious tilt going on. But I put it down, but when I come back to it and I progress a little farther, there's this, you know, hey, I got past that. And you know, I think a cheat code can get you skipping past a lot of those things. And I think that there's something to be learned in it being tough. And I don't necessarily have a problem with somebody if they want to use that and get to the end. I can totally understand, because I want to get there too, but I'd rather take the grind.
And that reminds me of a situation where I think cheat codes might be a positive thing. And not even so much toughness, but just as kind of a story. We all know about Soma, right? Like horror, techno horror, whatever you want to call it. Pretty freaky little game. It's scary. You can bring about some pretty good anxiety and and terror if you play it in the right conditions. But you know, there's a story there, and there's a component to the game that's fun to just see what the heck is going on, what's happening. And recently they created a mode called Safe Mode, which is kind of like a cheat code because it's basically God mode and makes the enemies a little less aggressive. And so my wife played this game, and she otherwise would not have finished the game because she does not enjoy those feelings of anxiety and fear and just, you know, having the crap scared out of you. But what that enabled her to do is play the game and play through the game, and where it's still creepy and you still experience some of those emotions, but you're in a place where you can just enjoy it for what it is. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if games that have stories and just experiences about them, that maybe cheat codes are okay if you need them for things like that. Or, you know, even on Contra, I guess, if you just can't get past level 2, okay, if you want to see what the game looks like, I guess you're going to have to cheat. I mean...
And I mean, I don't want to come off as having a problem necessarily with anybody that wants to do that. And I totally see what you're saying. And I think depending on what you're feeling or, you know, what you want to do, it's probably a good option. I just think in my case, I'm just kind of the guy that's willing to climb the hill and you know, I want to have that experience. I mean, I'm the guy that, and Medal of Honor kept storming that beach and trying to get past those dogs, and I kept getting killed and killed and killed and killed, and it's like I want to see that next stage. And so I mean, the experience of getting there means a whole lot to me personally, and I think that it's fine if other people want to go, like the situation you brought up, Matt, with your wife. Hey, that's cool. I get it. And I could see why some people would want to do that, So I think there's some benefit there, but they're definitely, and that's kind of why I wouldn't necessarily call a cheat code. I don't think that's exactly the right term because, if you wanted to be brutally honest about it, the only person you would be cheating might be yourself, but you're only cheating yourself if you feel like something's being taken away from you. And in my case, I feel like, experiencing that game the way that the developer or the creator did it is what I'm going to try to do.
I think you have a really good point. Because, taking Dark Souls, if you removed the feeling of accomplishment, if you cheated to get your way through the bosses, so much appeal would be lost, because that's half of it, is when you smash your head against a brick wall of a boss 20 times, and then the 21st time you walk away victorious. And it's just, it's crazy, the feeling you get from that. And that then spurs you forward onto the next thing.
You guys know that about me. How many times do you see something where we're multiplayer and I'm platforming and it's like, here I go, wah! Here I go, wah!
It's like, Matt, I'm going to go get a soda.
And Chris will go, okay, well, I'm right here, buddy, come on. And it's like, and I'll just keep trying, man.
It's like, hey, Chris, can you go to Stacy's house and get his controller?
Yeah, eventually I'll make it, and it just, I don't know. I think for me that there is that experience there, and it's just experiencing the joy and the frustration, and I just don't like. I like making things easier, but I don't like to feel like I'm cheating myself out of something.
Okay, let me complicate the conversation a little bit then, because two of the cheat codes we've talked about so far, and I'm using cheat codes as a very broad term. We talked about the Konami Code, and we talked about this safe mode in Soma. Both examples are something that the developers put in, right? Does that lead any more validity to using them because they were intentional? Whereas there are some cheat codes, and I'm thinking specifically in the history and kind of where this was growing to, you look at like Wizardry on PC, which was in the early 80s. Like weeks after that game was released, then suddenly people started releasing programs to inject things into that code so that you could be like, oh, I'm going to load up the secondary program and I'm going to give myself all the gold. Well, and that was not developer intended. So now we've got two different paths. Is one cheating. More valid than the other?
That's cheating, because I think that you're modding and changing something, and if the developer's intent was, hey, I'm going to put this out, because it's like, I know Half-Life, they had a developer mode where you could go in and you could mod and build new maps and do all of those things and kind of change it up and make it as hard or easy as you wanted to. And I think that's cool. And to answer one of the things that you had said about if the developer put that code in there, well, I think that was a way that they obviously intended people to be able to play part of the game. Now, not everybody. And in the case of what Matt had said about Soma, I think that's more like having a easy level or something, and I think that's perfectly fine, because I'm not going to lie to you, there's a lot of times I run into a game and I'll start off in easy mode and then go, I'm going to ramp this up a little bit, because it does change the experience. But if you're taking something that the developer did and you're doing it without consent, it is, if you don't have their blessing, then you're probably doing something that was not intended.
So let me throw this out there, and I'm talking about offline single player games. I'm not talking about Overwatch. I'm not talking about anything that is involving some other people in the United States or around the world. I'm talking about just me and my computer. If those programs that inject the code into Wizardry, if that's the only way I'm going to find Wizardry fun, does that lead any validity to it?
I think that you're getting back to that not being competitive. And I think that, to me, being a developer and working on some things, and not nearly the developer that Matt is, we learn a lot of what we do by looking at other people's code and by doing things. And I think that that's a little bit different. You're just looking at something and you're changing something and modifying something that you're doing for yourself. And you're not, if you're not pushing that out there and giving that away and damaging the development company or the title itself.
That is exactly what I was thinking, because I'm thinking single player, go for it. Do what you want. If you want to have infinite everything, cool. If that's how you have fun, but don't, load up let's go back, I don't know, Diablo, load up a trainer or a program or something for Diablo and give yourself all the gold and weapons and, these super powerful weapons. Well, I kill everything in one hit, and then go out on a review board and say, this game sucks, it's so boring. I played it for like 10 hours and I was just done. I killed everything. That is a problem. Like, you need to have the foresight that if you decide to do that, like, this is not the game. This is now your version of the game.
And I think that some of that is why we've ended up with places kind of like Steam and things like that, where back 10, 15 years ago, you'd go buy a game and actually install it and have it on your computer, and you could get in, and if you knew how to modify things, you could do that. It's a little more complicated to do those things now, and maybe that's part of why. I mean, people would get out there and do things, and then you, of course, would have pirated copies of things flying around and...
Yeah, I think the transition to online is completely what has killed the cheat code. And when I say kill the cheat code, I'm talking about the kind of cheat codes that we're talking about here, the ones that are built into the game in order to let you experiment and have fun. I mean, that's gone. I don't know of any modern releases that has anything like that built into it. But I do think I agree with what you're saying, that it's that transition has really changed the industry, because like I mean, some of the cheat codes that are nearest and dearest to my heart are like early 90s PC games, and they were all over the place. You could get an early 90s PC game, you could get it to do anything you wanted to, with a cheat code. But so this is really interesting. I'm interested that you guys really kind of wanted to talk about the morality of the cheat code. I didn't expect us to spend time on that, but that's led to a really interesting discussion and some really interesting questions. I do want to kind of shift the discussion now and ask, what was the first cheat code you remember using?
It was Doom.
Doom?
Yeah.
IDKFA?
Yeah. And the other ones, I don't remember.
The IDKFA is the only one I remember. That's the only one I used.
I know, right? Yeah, well, it was that one. And sometimes you even use combinations. It's like, I'm just going to go through with God mode this time, and you like felt good about yourself that way. Or, I'll just unlock the weapon so I can still die. So, I'm kind of getting the game. But, of course, when you're a kid, you're just, I don't know. And at some point during this, we should, I don't know, maybe touch on again why people do. Why do we enjoy this so much?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or why not, in Stacy's case. I think he talked about just that cheating yourself of the experience, which, I think if you realize that that's what you're doing, then okay. But you do need to realize that it's a little different now. But yeah, Doom. Doom is the first one that I remember. Good old shareware days.
Yeah, and I think that I know I'm, trying to remember back a long time, but it was either Punch-Out or Metroid, and I think it was probably Punch-Out, because I remember struggling to get to Mike Tyson, And then I remember I finally got to the point that I could get to Tyson, and he just kept cleaning my clock.
Now, I'm curious, do you remember with Punch-Out, was it a code that you put in, or was it a password that you got from somewhere that took you to Tyson?
I feel like there was maybe a combination of both, because I think you had a code that you put in that could get you to Tyson, and then there was maybe a combination of buttons that you could do that you dealt and received less damage. But I'm not sure of that.
Sure.
But I just remember that I got to that level and I cleared Tyson, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's how you do that. And then I was able to go back in and beat it after.
So the reason I asked if it was a password or if it was a button code, that's going to lead me somewhere. But real quickly, I'm going to tell you my first cheat code experience, and then we'll go back to that question. I'm pretty sure the first one I ever used was Metroid, was the Justin Bailey code. Because I remember as a kid, Metroid just flummoxed me. I could not wrap my brain around that game. And in a video game world where you had been trained to go from left to right continuously, and then suddenly you get Metroid, and it's like, wait a second, I can go right, I can go up, I can go down. My poor little brain didn't know what to do with that. So like Metroid was completely lost on me as a kid, and like I would play it and just get frustrated because I was like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing.
It was tough.
And so then like I remember this kid at school who was like, oh yeah, I beat Metroid, no big deal. And I didn't believe him. I was like, whatever. He's like, no, you can get this code, Justin Bailey, and you put it in. And I was like, Justin who? What? Huh? What are you talking about? He's like, no, the password screen, Justin Bailey, and then just all spaces and hit start, and it's awesome. It'll be great. And so I could not wait to get home from school that day, and threw in my copy of Metroid and just typed in the code, and then suddenly Samus was wearing a purple leotard, and she had green hair, and she was a she. I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know what was happening, and I was just completely transported. And I was like, I don't even understand what kind of black magic I just did, but I have opened a whole new world. Okay, so that was my first experience with cheat codes.
Did you go back and beat Metroid proper later?
No.
And that's what Stacy's talking about, right? So you've never really experienced Metroid the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, as an adult, I have.
Oh, okay.
As a child, I did
Then
not.
you didn't, because you considered it. No, I beat it.
Because you're right, yeah, I had beaten it. And not only that, but that code puts you in a very specific place in that game. It doesn't start you at the beginning with full power. It starts you close to the end. And so, like where it started me, going from the beginning of that game, I had no clue where I was. I didn't even know the map of Metroid enough to be, well, I wonder where I am. Oh, well, I guess I'll shoot this brain-looking thing. Oh, I beat the game. Cool. Mark another one off. Yeah, go me.
Oh, boy.
But I wanted to ask, because there is a period of history of the cheat code where, we talked about how they were developer tools and that you could put in a button combination to advance the level and get to where you needed to test. Or in the case of the Konami Code, the programmer of Gradius was like, this game's too hard. I need some help. And so he created the Konami Code. So quickly after that, it shifted to when Nintendo introduced the idea of a password in their video games. And they did this because in Japan they had the Famicom disk system, which could save your game to a floppy disk because it was a disk. Well, the United States didn't have that. And so they, at that point, did not have savable ROM in their cartridges, so they created this password thing. So then the cheat code changed from button combinations that the developer built into the game to manipulating this password thing. Because in your password, each letter corresponded to telling the game something about where you were in the game. So it was possible that passwords that they never intended to function would actually do something. Hence the Justin Bailey code for Metroid. And so now this is kind of like a new middle weird area of cheat codes, because now you can, like on an NES cartridge, essentially manipulate that code and achieve weird, crazy, wild results. And so that's why I asked you with Mike Tyson, which one did you do? Because those are two very distinct ways of cheating.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that it was probably, I feel like it was a button combination thing, but I can't remember for sure. And I'm sure somebody out there probably
that's all right.
knows exactly. But
yeah, and I'm not that familiar with Mike Tyson cheat code. You probably picked the one game that I don't have memorized. But anyway, that's okay. But, this really did become something in the culture of video games. Like I talked about Nintendo Power at the beginning. They had a whole section in their game magazine devoted to cheats. And outside of Nintendo Power, if a magazine put cheat codes on the cover or, hey, find the cheat to this game, they would sell more issues of that magazine. So people were hungry for this. They wanted to do it. And I think that brings us to the question that you posed, Matt, which is why would anyone want to cheat? And I think the obvious one is you want to cheat to win. But what else? What other reasons might somebody want to use a cheat code?
I think some of it, and when I was a kid, I totally did this, that sense of power. Because sometimes just, you're not in it for the story. You're not in it for the real experience. You're just like, I just want to be, in your little video game world, just a god amongst men or whatever, and just go in there and do what you want. I mean, in some games, that just happens anyway. I think of like the prototype games. I don't know if you guys ever played those. They weren't great, but they were fun. Like it was just fun. You jump down the middle of a group of military people and you just wipe them out with one move, and you're just like, haha, yeah. That's right. And so, as a kid, I mean, how many times did you want to escape from, school and your parents and, just how rough they are and stuff. And here you are in this game, and now you're ultra powerful and you can do anything and no one can stop you. So maybe there's a sense of that there. That might be one thing.
Well, and I think another thing is, I know as a kid there would be times I was reading a book or looking at a comic book and I'd flip to the end. You just want to know how it ends. And if you're in a situation where you've got a game that you feel like you're never going to beat, I think that people want to see the ending of it.
I think there's an element here which is maybe a more positive outlook on the cheat code and doing this type of thing to games, which is, as a kid, I did not have the video game collection that I have now. I did not have, access to virtual libraries or, anything. That didn't exist. I had like 5 or 6 NES games, and that's what you had until it was your birthday, and then you'd get something new. So, you'd play these games and play these games and play these games. So I remember using cheat codes to increase the longevity of the game. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, hey, this is going to change the experience for me. And to that end, there were even cheat codes that the purpose was to make the game more challenging. And so if it was a game that I was really good at, it was like, okay, well, Super Mario Bros. 3, no problem. Can I do Super Mario Bros. 3 with double damage? Ooh,
there you go.
I don't know if I can or not, And so, like, there are those kinds of elements to it as well. And another element, I think, is kind of similar to what Stacy was talking about, but it was impatience. And the game I'm thinking about is Star Wars Jedi Knight 2. Which is a game that I revere. I mean, it's one of my top 10 like gaming experiences. Mm-hmm. And I was there at Babbage's on release day, and I had the copy, and I paid, and it was a big event for me. And I got home and I installed it and I loaded it up, and they dared not give me a lightsaber from the beginning. What is this? And so, immediately, was looking up the cheat code to get a lightsaber. What is that? Okay, punching that in, boom, I got a lightsaber in the first level. And I was playing through the game, and I think if you're playing the game like third levels when you actually get the lightsaber or something like that. So I'm playing the game with my lightsaber in the first 2 levels, and it's apparent that these levels are broken. They were not designed with the intention of you to use the lightsaber. I didn't care. I wanted my lightsaber, and I got it, and I was happy.
So that makes me think of New Game Plus. Like, most people probably like New Game Plus, and a lot of people will ask for New Game Plus if it's not already there. And I think it's that. Like, and of course, with that, you're at least kind of forced into playing the game as the devs wanted you to, but then they're like, oh, okay, now you go ahead and start. And you got all your upgrades, you got all your weapons, and yeah, we might bump up the power of the enemies so that you don't just, you aren't bored. But it's that you get to now, okay, instead of having to build up, and you've already learned all the mechanics, you've learned all the different things that you can do with your tool set, and now you get to play through the whole game, and instead of just using that those one or two things that you have when you first played, well, now you've got 9 different options, so you can play how you want to play at that point. And I think that's super cool. To where it's like, here, play it the way, here's the experience that we intended, well, now it's yours, go have fun. I think that would be a nice kind of cheat codey way to do things.
That's interesting. And that kind of takes me into what I was going to use as the closing question for this podcast, but there are still some things that I want to talk about. So we're just all out of order today. That's okay though. That's fine. I think we're making some interesting points here. But that is there a place for the cheat code in modern gaming?
I think probably, as long as it's not a competitive situation, because if you play competitive games, they're really not competitive.
Sure. And I think we all agree, and I think probably anybody listening would agree. If you're in a competitive situation, that completely changes the conversation.
Like I said, I don't necessarily have a problem with it if that's what people want to do. I don't think it'd be something that I would necessarily want to do, but I think there probably is a place for it, because some people don't have the desire to grind, or they want to see the end of it. And I guess if they're paying for it and it's not causing the developer issues, or it's not cheating somebody else out of something, then sure, if you can make it work.
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to the kind of like the New Game Plus, play it your way. If you have fun that way and it's not hurting anybody else, then why not? Or if it's a game, like Soma, where, okay, I need to do this in order to actually play the game, otherwise I'll just never experience it. And going through a game like that, playing it versus watching someone or watching on YouTube is a whole different experience. And so, like if Resident Evil 7 had when we played that, my wife and I, it was me playing, her watching. But if there was something on that game where, you still have to shoot the enemies, you still have to beat the bosses, but it made it where she wouldn't be able to die, and things were a little easier in that regard, so you didn't have that just complete fear whenever something comes out of the black oozy things coming out of the wall. Then playing that for her would be a whole different experience, but she probably won't ever get that unless the developer does something like that. So I think that's probably what I can think of as being the main place for cheat codes, is just that aspect, or just the aspect of being able to have some fun with a game after you've messed with it.
The idea of a modern day application of the cheat code being allowing maybe someone who would be termed a non-gamer to enjoy a game, that's a really compelling idea. And I'm not a survival horror fan by any means, so I had not played Soma, and I did not. I even avoided Resident Evil at the store. I would take a wide berth around the aisle whenever I saw it. But the idea that you have a mode that is considerate of somebody who has not been playing video games for the last 30 years. That's interesting, and I think about my children who play games, and I think about my wife who occasionally plays a game, and if they had those options and those modes, they might play more games or a wider stretch of games, so that's a really good answer as far as to how cheat codes could work in modern games. All right. There's one big piece of the cheat code history that we have not talked about yet. And just when we brand a podcast, the history of the cheat code, I feel like we need to deliver that. So in 1990, the Game Genie is born. Did either of you have a Game Genie when you were growing up?
I did not personally own one, but I had access. I had a couple of friends that had them. They were interesting.
I could never wrap my head around it. I don't know why. Like, I think I had one, or maybe, could you rent them?
You could.
I think I rented one time, and of course, I just probably never read the instructions or how to even get it to work, and so I'm like, why does this do anything? And then I probably took it back because I just remember just getting really frustrated that I'm like, I don't see the point in this. I don't see why it's not working. Of course, I was very young, but
Sure. Well, I bought one because I just knew that this would make my game completion numbers soar through the roof. So I had
there's a
one.
theme here.
I'm better now, but this is just how I thought as a child. But I mean, it is a physical cartridge that goes between the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, whatever, that goes between that system and the game cartridge.
Stacy, what do you bet that he still has this chart in his game room?
Oh, sure. It's probably laminated.
Yeah,
And
we
he
might
has
need to go check
duplicates.
that out.
It's not true.
Because I bet it's hanging there. It's
No,
probably
it's
really old, a lot
conservation
longer
framed,
now.
not laminated. I'm sorry.
I don't have my chart anymore.
Sure.
Anyway, the Game Genie.
He's memorized it.
That's right. It's online.
It
What
is
are you
the
talking
digital
about?
age. Yeah, what am I thinking?
Anyway, the Game Genie works by injecting code into what the cartridge is feeding to the system. And I'm not a programmer, so beyond saying it injects code, that's really as detailed as I can get. But it lets you put in a code and it came with this really thick book of codes, and then they would do periodic updates in game magazines. Hey, here's some new Game Genie codes for you. And you could put in a code and you could get different effects in the game, like invulnerability, infinite ammo, skip levels, that kind of thing. And this was a big deal because, I mean, cheating was already a big deal in magazines and in gaming culture. And then to have this device, oh my gosh, that was fascinating. Nintendo, of course, sued to stop the Game Genie, saying that by changing the code, you were actually creating a derivative work. And a judge laughed at that and said, no, that's ridiculous. This is fine. And then Sega actually embraced the Game Genie and gave it their little seal of approval under one condition. I thought this was a very interesting condition. It was not allowed to work on Genesis games that had a save feature. So like an RPG, like a Phantasy Star 2, 3, or 4, or Shining Forces, a game like that had a save feature, the Game Genie couldn't touch it. So it was only for games that didn't have saves. But it was, I mean, this was a huge thing. I mean, they sold tons of these things. They made them for every freaking system in the world. You could get a Game Genie for a Game Boy if you wanted to. And it was just hugely popular. And that kind of takes us from the password pack and manipulating games through passwords. Then you have the Game Genie, and then you have really where it started to disappear, because then you start to have games that are starting to go online. You know, we've already kind of really covered how online gaming changed that landscape and changed what a cheat code would be acceptable to do and would not be acceptable to do. But man, the 90s, that was a good time to be cheating in video games. I'll tell you, there's a lot of options there. And you know, we talked briefly about PCs, and Doom was Matt's first cheat code with IDKFA. I remember the cheat code for Wolfenstein 3D. You know, getting all the ammunition in that, and gosh, I remember bringing up console commands and doing goofy things in the game, and no clip mode, so you just like fly through everywhere and be like, I don't care if there's a wall there.
Yeah, and think about like just the Morrowind, Elder Scrolls series in general, the console commands, and I mean, it's been so long. Does it make it where you can't save your game at that point, or does it just turn off achievements?
Elder Scrolls itself, I can't speak to, but there are a lot of games that when you engage cheating, it's like, okay, but you can't save your game.
Yeah.
Okay, but you won't record a score with this.
Yeah.
You know, which, you know, as somebody who was fine with cheating, I was like, fine, I don't care.
Yeah.
Fine. I didn't want to post my score anyway. So this is what I'm going to do.
Well, it's kind of funny how they've wrapped up a lot of the cheat code stuff into official things now. Like, I mean, even Minecraft creative mode. I mean, that's essentially here, infinite everything, and if you want, you'll never die, and you can fly, and which is cheating when you think of Minecraft as how it is, but at the same time, I mean, it's opened up a whole new, I mean, that's what it is. It's creativity. So, I mean, yeah, it's not cheating. You know, it's a different mode. But, I mean, if you think maybe back in the day, if they didn't have creative mode, but then they had a code that said, oh, well, here, you know, make the enemies not attack you. And oh, here's a code to give you all of the materials. And here's a code for infinite materials. I mean, it's the same thing. But now they've made it official.
Well, and speaking specifically about Minecraft, if there wasn't the creative mode, I don't think my kids would have started playing when they did. I know that the
Well, I think even more broadly, I don't think it'd be as popular as it
Yeah.
is if it didn't have it.
because my youngest son would not even go in whatever the regular mode was because it just freaked him out to be attacked. But he kept playing creative long enough that he was like, okay, well, I'm going to go in the other mode. And now he's, he'd see whatever those guys are. I can't remember them, but the little green, like the zombie guy, creepers.
Yeah.
He'd see those guys coming and he'd just start screaming and run off. So
He's 27. Is that no?
yeah,
I'm kidding.
no. So, but in that case, and I think it's kind of similar to what Matt had said. I think that it helped him be able to play the game and get comfortable with it and get to the point that now he's going in and doing all of it. So I don't really. I look at that again as almost like an easy mode, not really necessarily a cheat.
That's another thing, almost like training wheels,
Yeah.
Just, you get to learn the mechanics and how the game works before you are thrown into it. I mean, a lot of games have kind of a tutorial mode, but especially for our younger peoples, the children and stuff, I mean, they may need or want just some extra time to get familiar with stuff.
Yes, because I've played a couple of games you can't even get through the tutorial. So, So I mean, I think it's good that they put those in games and people of varying levels of, gaming experience can step in there and play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I don't know, I wonder, has the cheat code in modern games, have they then, because of competitive and co-op and online experience, have they then said, well, instead of having cheat codes, we're just going to wrap these up into like a separate, safe, away from where it's going to cause problems with other people, into our own little modes?
I think so. I think that's kind of, if you look at what a cheat code actually was, I think it's branched out into some different things.
Yeah, it definitely has morphed into some really new ideas and some ideas that have bettered gaming in a lot of ways. I think Minecraft's a perfect example because you're right. If that creative mode hadn't existed, my kids wouldn't have started playing Minecraft and that experience, that they would have missed out on that. So, well, that I think is a pretty good history of the cheat code. We took it from the origins as a dev tool all the way up to new game modes and new ideas and new ways to play in the modern world. So it never really went away, but it did adapt with the times. So good on the old cheat code for doing that. I'm proud of it. So to close out this episode, favorite cheat code. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind that you were just really, really loved? Stacy's saying no.
No, I really,
because he was too good for them.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I don't think I had the experience with them kind of the way that you guys did. So, I just kind of, I do appreciate that they appear to have morphed into some other things. But like I said, I don't really feel like they're necessarily a cheat code. So
I don't know if my memory is good enough to answer that question. I do remember specifically to this day. You guys remember Hexen?
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a weapon or a power or something that would allow you to shoot out columns of lightning, and it would hit enemies and they would like convulse and just like explode into a gooey mess. I never played Hexen normally because all I wanted to do was shoot bad guys with columns of lightning and watch them explode. And so I guess that would be my favorite because it was so cool, and it was, I don't know.
The question though, was that something additional that you couldn't have had playing the game, or
no? I think it was part of the game.
Okay.
It was just, but it was like the final weapon, kind of like the BFG 9000 in Doom. Like once you got you take anything out of that, but this was like the final ability, and so I would have unlock all of them and give me infinite ammo or magic or whatever the heck it was, and from level 1, it was just a lightning fest for me.
This reinforces your weird Emperor Palpatine obsession.
And you know, the way he loves to run around in Destiny, zapping everything with lightning bolts.
Well, you know, there's something to it, I guess.
My favorite cheat code, infinite money in SimCity. Man,
yeah, we
that's
don't
practical.
like that cheat code.
But you know, okay. So funny fact about that cheat code: if you used it 4 times, it would trigger a catastrophic event in your city. So there was give and take to that cheat code, unless you would start a brand new game and before you built anything, you would just use it to max out your money, because then it would be like earthquake. It's like, I don't care, I haven't built anything.
Whatever. I love that idea of using a cheat code and having it let you continue like normal, but just doing something to the game that's kind of silly. That could be fun.
That could be fun.
We could play with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But all right, good discussion. Very interesting. I'm glad to know that the cheat code does live on in modern gaming in some way, shape, or form. So everyone out there listening, feel free to share your favorite cheat codes with us. If we got anything wrong, let us know. Well, you know, as long as you're not playing online, as long as you're not trying to screw somebody else's game over, then hey, I say cheat away and have fun with it, because there are tons of games that I never would have experienced as much as I did without a friendly cheat code. So with that, please visit RavenFist.com for more content that we've created and more meandering thoughts about video games. We've got this podcast going. We've got our active blog. We've got our YouTube channel going. And please stick around and see what we're doing as far as developing games on our own. And very soon we're going to have some information and some content built around the games that we're working on, that we're developing, so that'll be exciting. But as always, we just like being a part of this conversation, part of the community. Video games have been a lot to us growing up and even now, and you know, that's the audience that we're speaking to, and that's the interaction that we like to have. So thanks a lot for that. And with that, tell all your friends, ravenfist.com, and until next time.